This is the Fiat 500 ABARTH. Fantastic residuals, great fun to drive. But if you're thinking about buying one, hold up right there. Watch this video because I'm going to take you over all the common problems and help you get a good car. Let's go. So picture the scene. We've arrived to see your new Fiat 500 ABARTH, but first things first, we're going to need a nice warm brew to help us through those checks. And what better way to enjoy it than out of one of these Legacy Legends cups. Now these are available online, and you know we don't really promote things on this channel, particularly if they're not relevant, but I thought that's worthy of a mention. The sheer amount of choice that you've got, it's all inspired by racing drivers and different manufacturers, means it's certainly worth a look. I'm going to add a link in the description below so you can check it out and maybe get one for yourself. Lovely. So when it comes to the engine, really not that much to worry about. It wasn't a new engine for the 500 ABARTH, it was actually an older Fiat Fireblock that was used for these, that was adapted and brought forward to suit the 500 platform. Now in terms of servicing, the service interval was actually set by Fiat at 18,000 miles. Now that was considered quite a lot by a lot of owners and mechanics, so a lot of them brought that down to 9,000 miles. So check the service history on the one that you're looking at and see how frequently the owner has serviced that car. So if you fancied something with a wee bit more firepower from the factory, there was a couple different options. We could get the Turismo, around about 140 or so brake horsepower. You could get the Competizione, Scottish accent meets Italian terms never goes well. That was about 160 brake horsepower. Or you could get the 695 version, which was a massive 198 brake horsepower in this shoe-sized car. Something else I want to mention as we close this bonnet down is the after-run coolant pump. Now this isn't a problem by any means, it's something that might just save you a little bit of worry after your purchase has taken place. So what happens is, you've maybe been a bit of a spirited drive, you park up, you turn the car off, and then you can hear this pump cycling continually. Now that's the after-run coolant pump, and what it does is it basically cools the turbo if it's left at too high a temperature. In the olden days, you maybe had a turbo timer that would keep the engine running and keep the pump going, but on these, the engine can actually be turned off and that pump continues to cycle. Very clever. So these next few issues are best explored from behind the wheel, so let's go. I always look forward to this bit. So out in that test drive, big thing to listen for right away, always seems to be the case on these little cars, is the anti-roll bar drop links. Make sure they're not knocking on the rear. As for the front, tends to be the top mounts that wear out there. So in general, just have a good listen and make sure nothing is making too much noise. Try and find yourself a little bit of a rougher road or speed bumps to really test it out. Now again, not the end of the world. If you do hear anything, easily rectified by pretty much any garage, but it allows you to keep a wee bit of money in your pocket, bring it up with the seller. Now beyond that, what you also want to check is hit that brake pedal. Have a listen to see if the rear brakes are squeaking. There's a common thing, and it's again easily rectified. If you know where to grease, the exact area of where to grease on the pads, you can stop it. But again, a little bit of labour involved if you're not going to be doing it yourself. Be aware of it, bring it up with the seller, money in your pocket again. Final thing to check on this test drive, seems a bit of a random one, but these Fiats are full of random little quirks. Test the windscreen washers, and the reason we're doing that is, well, they can tend to block or just fail altogether. And again, these are all great negotiation tools for you to bring up with that seller. Now as for the infotainment system, couple of little problems there. Let's talk about it. The problem was this Blue and Me infotainment system that you'd pair your music up to. It was a Microsoft-based system. So if you had an iPod or an iPhone in an early car, they wouldn't always communicate. You were basically getting caught in the world of technology politics, which wasn't great. However, thankfully, they sorted that out on the later cars. Now another thing you want to listen out for is a squealing that comes from underneath the dashboard. Now what that refers to is the air conditioner blower going bad, and that is a really labour intensive job. We need to pull the full dash out in order to replace that. So if you're hearing that, proceed with severe caution or just walk away altogether. Gearbox wise, not a lot to worry in these cars, thankfully. You're either going to end up with one of these, the really reliable 5-speed manual, or you were going to get the MTA auto style gearbox. Now on that note, there were just a few isolated instances where that particular box had a problem. So you'd be driving along, you could be doing 70 miles an hour on the motorway or highway, and the car would suddenly decide to choose neutral, which would be pretty terrifying. Now thankfully a gearbox reset by a Fiat authorised dealership usually sorts that out. However, not always, so again, be very careful if you notice anything like that on the test drive. Next up, there's a few bodywork issues you need to be aware of. However, before we get there, a wee favour to ask from you guys. We're waging war, as always, against dodgy sellers who try and cover up faults with cars that you're buying. If you want to support us with this, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notification, and also give this video a like. We really appreciate it. Let's talk bodywork now. So an enthusiast car gonna have been driven enthusiastically, so have a look for any crash damage. What we're looking for there are these panel gaps, make sure they're all uniform. Have a look for any really dodgy colour matches on the car that you can see right away, because that's going to make the car hard to resell for you. And generally, just have a good look over. Now, a lot of these Fiat 500 Abarths are festooned with graphics on the side as well. Now, a lot of that stuff, believe it or not, quite expensive if you're buying OEM from the factory. So make sure they're all still sticking to the paint good. And again, if anything's missing, that can suggest crash damage as well. Now, finally, door handles. These have a tendency to fall into pieces as well. So don't be shy, give it a good old tug a couple times, make sure it's all working as it should be. And finally, make sure the doors lock as well. There's been a few instances where loose ground connections have caused the door locks not to work. Random, I know, but there you go. So how do we finish up then? Well, a surprisingly well-made, reliable car from Fiat. It really is very reliable, and for that reason we're giving it a massive 9 out of 10. A couple of little things maybe knock a point off here or there, but overall an absolutely solid car. Last thing to mention is be aware that if you're ordering any parts, these can take quite a long time to come from the Fiat factory, so something to bear in mind with your purchase as well. Now if you've got any questions, or you own one of these cars and you have a problem you're not sure about, drop it in the comments below and we can come back and help you out with that.